Welcome to episode 18 of VR Roundtable. My name is Anthony. I'm one of the three hosts that we have here, and I am of course joined by Gary coming to us from the UK, and I'm also joined by Steve coming from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm going to send it over to Gary real quick. Gary, how's it going considering your home team is currently losing 2-0 right now against Chelsea? I happen to see it on NBC a little bit.
Do you know what? I was waiting for this to come up because I really don't follow football at all, so it doesn't affect me in any way. But a lot of people around me keep talking to me about football, and yeah, I mean, I play this little thing on my phone on this little app where I guess results, but because I know nothing about football, I'm basically putting in random results, and yet I'm quite high up in the table actually, just picking these random results. So it's working out pretty well for me. So I don't really care what Leicester do, but good luck to them anyway.
Yeah, here in America, you know, NBC, one of our big channels here, they've started to show football matches, soccer matches is what we call it here, but on Saturdays they show games, and I watch them every once in a while. Both of my sons play soccer a little bit, and I just happened to notice. I was like, "Oh, Leicester City, that's Gary." So yeah. and they were losing 2-0, so I just thought I'd bring it up.
They actually won the season last year for the first time in God knows how long. So this was like a like rags to riches story last year, and it took over all the sports media over here because nobody expected my City to win. But yeah, we did really well last year. That's all I know about football. That's it. So we're done now.
Okay. And then we'll send it over to Steve. Steve, I don't know what's going on with you. I know you're in basketball country over there with college basketball and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know who's playing right now. I don't think anybody. So everything's all well in basketball country, and you know, we don't have any. We have a minor league soccer team, which is kind of fun, but yeah, soccer's not that popular around these parts. It's going good. Otherwise, you know, viewers may see I'm in a different setting. My family is out of town for the weekend, so I get an extended gaming opportunity. So, you know, I'm up here where everything isn't quite as loud. So
it's super bright in there. You're kind of like in super hot.
That's right.
It's like
I played
white
super
everywhere.
hot earlier too. Yeah.
All right, guys. So this week, what we're going to do is we're going to do our 2017 preview show. And what we did was all three of us ranked 5 games, the 5 games that we're most interested in for 2017 VR games. And what we did was we ranked our games, and then using, you know, I just kind of tallied it in a way where like the number 1 game gets 5 points, the number 5 game gets 1 point, and then see how our collective list comes out. So I do have a collective list, and I thought maybe we could start off with that and kind of talk about some of these games that we're really excited about. Let's see here. So at number 9, trying to get my thing situated here. At number 9 on our list, 1 point. It was only ranked on one list. Knockout League by Grab Games, I believe it is. And this is coming to both Vive and Oculus. And Steve, you had this on your list, so why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what was it called again? Knockout League.
Knockout League. Yeah, the game was announced at CES or during the CES timeframe, and it's not a title that I had heard and didn't know anything of, and still don't know too much about it. In fact, I wasn't aware that it was coming to Oculus. Since it was mostly, I think, HTC Vive account that kind of put it out there on Twitter, and that's how I found it. But anyways, you know, to summarize the game really is it looks like Punch Out from on the original Nintendo, maybe a little bit of Super Punch Out on the Super Nintendo, but in VR. It's real kind of cartoony and arcadey, and it just looks like it could be a lot of fun. Now, it could end up being really lame. You know, again, we don't know. We just have a sort of an announcement trailer for it. But for what little they show in there, it was something that I was wanting, you know, from early in VR. I was like, you know, a Punch-Out style game would be real fun. And that stems back from on the PS3, what's it called? That fighting game we talked about last week or last
the
show.
fight.
Yeah, that's probably why I couldn't remember. But you know, it's kind of in that same vein. I feel like you can probably get a good workout, you know, and if they make it more arcadey, you know, where it's not too, you know, much of a fighting sim, I think it can be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to it.
With Punch-Out, like when I think about Punch-Out, I played the original Mike Tyson's Punch-Out way long time ago before he was convicted of anything and they took his name off of it and all that type of stuff. But I remember with Punch-Out, it's kind of like the boxers that you're boxing, they kind of have like a specific routine that they do. And so you kind of have to learn their patterns, and then you know, okay, now he's going to do the bolo punch, so I need to dodge over here and time it. Does the game, does Knockout League kind of use that same style where they kind of have a pre-programmed routine that they kind of go through and you have to kind of learn the style?
I don't think we know. It seems like it could go that direction. And some of the imagery that they released, there was an octopus, and you know, he had 8 gloves on, or maybe 6. He's got to have 2 to stand on, right? But you know, it seems like they're going to go that way. It's not going to be realistic boxing. You know, I think it's safe to say it's not going to be that, but it may be, yeah, where you kind of learning patterns and learning how to strike right at the weak point at the right time. So
all right, so that's number 9 on our list here. Let me find out what's number 8. Okay, so number 8, now this one got 2 points because Gary had it ranked, I believe, 4th on his chart. The Gallery, episode 2, Heart of the Emberstone. So Gary, why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
Well, this one, yeah. I mean, for anybody who owns a HTC Vive or even an Oculus Rift now, Touch is out, they'll probably be aware of episode 1 of the Gallery because it was getting a lot of publicity when it was first released, because it was one of the bigger and more polished titles for the HTC Vive upon release. So it was, I mean, a lot of people were playing this game. It was quite an expensive title for its length. So it was about 2 hours long, I believe. And I've played through it once, and I really enjoyed this, especially the narrative element of it. But yeah, so now they've been working with this, carrying on working on this, and I don't know exactly how many episodes there are in total. I think I've heard somewhere that there might be 4 episodes. But this is the 2nd installment, so it's been a long time coming, really. You know, this was released when the HTC Vive was released back in April, so we've had all these months with just these 2 hours of content, really. But like I say, a lot of people were talking about this when it was first released, and I'll say it again, the narrative through this, it drives you through, and especially at the beginning of VR, when we first got these headsets, narrative was something that was missing in so many things. Not necessarily missing, it's just that the titles that were released around that time were focused on other things other than narrative. So it was always something that we always longed for. And yeah, so playing through the first episode of the Gallery was a special experience. So I played through it in about 2 sittings, I think. Really enjoyed it. The story's good. It's probably not as amazing as some people will have you believe, but the tone changes throughout it, and there's quite a lot of variety in the game as well, based around the narrative. As I say, the tone changes, and by the time you get to the end, it's sort of becoming almost like a completely different kind of game. But so it really had its hooks into me by the end of episode 1. So this is just something that I had to put on my list because it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to the release of.
Yeah, I know when it comes to the original Gallery, the first one, Call of the Starseed, there were a lot of complaints about the length, and then there were complaints about the price, and people were saying, well, you know, this is episodic, there's going to be more episodes, and so a lot of people are wondering, is the next episode going to be relatively short? Is it going to be another $30 thing? Have we heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything. I don't know the length of it, although I think the cost of episode 1 has now come down quite a bit. And also it was bundled in with some HTC Vives later on. So there are a lot of people out there that have played this game. Again, I would imagine they're probably going to be keeping it sort of the 2 hour, 2.5 hour length. as far as price goes, I don't believe anything has been announced yet in terms of price for episode 2.
Okay, so let's get on to our next one on the list. And the next one is Farpoint by Impulse Gear for PlayStation VR. And actually, Farpoint and the Gallery were tied. These are both tied for 7th and 8th. They both got 2 points. I ranked Farpoint as my 4th most wanted VR game of 2017. And Farpoint for me this is the big Sony game. You know, when Sony decided to do PlayStation VR, it's my belief that they got this developer, they set him off to the side, they gave him a lot of money, and they said, look, we want a really showpiece software that we can put out on PlayStation VR that's going to really show off the power of this. The other thing we might remember is if you go back to the announcement of PlayStation 4 Pro, when PlayStation 4 Pro was first announced, Farpoint was the one single PlayStation 4 Pro game that they mentioned would get a big boost off the PlayStation 4 Pro with better like super sampling, things being more detailed, more crisp in the background. And then there's also, of course, the gun that you can get for it. You put your Move controllers, or actually, does it just have the stuff built in? I don't know if you put the Move in it or not, but it has the gun controller, and a lot of people have played it at trade shows, and they feel like it's a really impressive combination to have that gun controller and the world that they put you in. And so I'm very excited about this. We haven't heard anything about a date for Farpoint, which is a little bit worrying. I know there was an article a long time ago where some Sony executive was saying it was coming in late January, but obviously that's not happening. So I don't know if the one little negative on the PSVR note is everything. I mean, people are really happy with what's going on with PSVR, but the one worry is, okay, well, what's next? And so we know this Farpoint is a big one. And so the question is Sony going to maybe hold on to this thing because they don't have a ton of stuff? Maybe they'll even save it for E3. So maybe we have to wait a long time. Let me kick it over to Steve real quick. Steve, any comments on Farpoint? I think you had it as one of your honorable mentions.
Yep. You know, there was a video, and I don't know if it was Sony or the developer that put it out, but basically a couple guys, and it was kind of produced real corny like, but a couple guys got to go and play Farpoint, and that's how I got a sort of an extended look at it. And that's when I kind of got more high on it. Like, you know, prior to that, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, it's a shooter. But the game, you know, it looks like it has very, very good graphics. It's, you know, you're shooting a lot of aliens. And one thing that I did see was there seemed to be some scale. There was a big creature alien thing that they had to take out, and the game just looks really polished and solid and a fully featured game, which, you know, is something that we should all be looking forward to, you know, because that's kind of scarce picking still in VR. Any kind of fully featured title is to be sought after, and that's really why I included it, and it's why I think it's going to be pretty popular when the time comes. And I do regarding release, now I've not heard a firm time, but I do want to say that I keep seeing Q2. So that kind of puts it in the April to June window, which would make sense, and also kind of puts it out there near E3.
Yeah, the E3 thing, the only thing you worry with E3 is like, are you going to hold it for E3 or is it going to come out before E3? So hopefully it's before E3, because I know PSVR owners, they have a nice varied lineup of a lot of different stuff, but they're very demanding. They want more and more games because they're used to the console constant flood of games. So you do see a lot of complaints out there. Gary, I know you've seen a little bit of Farpoint. Any thoughts?
Yeah, maybe I need to see that video that you saw, Steve, because for me, when I've seen this, it looks good. It looks like a good game, but from everything I've seen, it just looks like a straightforward shooter where you're progressing through sort of narrow canyons, and you're just going forward all the time, and you're shooting waves of enemies that come towards you. That's all I've seen of it so far, and I'm sure there's more to it than that. And it looks good for what it is anyway, even taking that into account. And I actually saw this game being played at EGX here in the UK, big gaming convention over here, and I saw some people playing it, and it looked really good on the monitors, and people seem to have nothing but positive things to say about it. So it's one that certainly I'll look out for, but I just need to see something a little bit more from it, really.
Okay, so at number 6 on our list is Robo Recall. And let's see, Steve had it at number 4 on his list. I had it at number 5 on my list, and I think Gary had it as an honorable mention. So let's go ahead and kick it over to Steve. Tell us, what is it about Robo Recall that has your interest piqued?
Well, really just watch the video, the trailers and stuff that we've seen. Like, it just looks very fun. You know, the gameplay isn't anything like Super Hot, of course, but you know, it just seems simple, easy to hop in. You can get going fast, play for a short duration, and hop out, kind of thing. And you know, it's very arcadey. The mechanics, the look, the presentation, it all seems, you know, really well done. And of course, you know, Epic is a good developer. My reservations on the title, though, is that it may be shallow. You know, it may be too arcadey. You know, even though it's not the same kind of game. Say Fruit Ninja. You know, it's a real polished arcadey thing. It's meant to have a real wide appeal. Anybody can walk up to it and play it and enjoy it and then put it down. It's not something they keep coming back to over and over and over and over. Now, I don't know that Robo Recall is going to be that way. And, you know, I have no reason to really believe it other than what they've shown and kind of how they've talked about it. They've mentioned it being this arcadey type experience. But other than that, you know, it looks fun. It looks a little unique. You know, it's doing something a little different, which, you know, is also nice in the sea of wave shooters, is to be doing something different.
Yeah, Gary, you had this, I believe, as one of your honorable mentions. Any quick words on that?
Yeah, it was very, very close to being on my actual list, to be honest, this one, because I'm a big fan of Bullet Train, just the very short demo that we've played. And this is obviously based on what they learned while making that game. So Robo Recall really does look interesting to me. The only thing is, yeah, like Steve, I'm concerned about just longevity, and if it's just a little shallow shooter, really, that we've got so many of already in VR, that I just worry about that. That's the only thing. I think it'll be a good title, though.
Yeah, for me, I think people are kind of sleeping on this game a little bit, because we found out that Oculus gave Epic $10 million to make this. And this is Epic Games. You know, this is their first really big VR game. And I know it's not a big game. I'm sure Epic doesn't have like all of their programmers slaving away on it. It's like a side project for them. But they did get 10 million. And I remember when I first saw the trailer for it, it was just one of these trailers that when I saw it, it just had me like smiling, you know, from ear to ear. I was like, oh yeah, this is perfect. Just the comedy of it. It looks like it's very arcade-like. And I don't think it's going to have any deep story that's going to captivate you or anything. It's going to be a very arcadey kind of game. But I think it's going to have that level of polish that we don't always see on a lot of these games. We still haven't seen a lot of major companies that have released a game on some of these on the PC platforms. You know, we're just starting to barely get that now, with Ubisoft having Eagle Flight and stuff like that. So I think that, and then also Epic Games, I mean, this is Unreal Engine in VR. If they really want to show other developers that you can do some really nice things with Unreal Engine, this is their chance to do it. And I know, Gary, you've had a lot of complaints about Unreal Engine, like the performance is kind of sketchy. And sometimes when you fire up a game and you see Unity, you're like, oh, thanks, you know, I'm glad it's Unity, because it's probably going to flow a little bit better and run a little bit better. Sometimes you get these Unreal games, and I don't know what it is about them, but sometimes they have a little bit of issues. So hopefully Epic can iron that out a little bit, and hopefully it'll be a really polished experience. Remember, this is a free experience, supposedly, for for Oculus owners. I don't know if they'll have some type of price on it for the people with Revive, or if it will just be straight up free and we can try it as well. And it's, I believe, first quarter 2017, but I don't know that that's been ironed out. So that's Robo Recall. I'm definitely excited for that one. Okay, let's get into our top 5 overall now. Coming in at number 5 is Lone Echo, and this one is being created by Ready at Dawn, which is another one of Ready at Dawn is a primetime developer. And Gary, I know you had this one on your list, I believe, so why don't I kick it over to you for Lone Echo?
Yeah, well, just looking through my list actually of the games that I selected overall, I'm seeing that there seems to be like some kind of theme of narrative and story in a lot of these games. And with Lone Echo, we've only seen, I mean, well, I've only seen the initial trailer that came out for this game, but it seems to not just focus on gameplay, but also seems to have some kind of narrative and story to drag you through the game as well, which is really what I'm looking for in a lot of my titles that I'm looking forward to. And to me, this looks like a better version, or the version of Adrift that I was expecting, with a very interesting locomotion mechanic where you're basically dragging yourself through this space station, just grabbing hold of things and pulling yourself through, which seems to work very well in some other similar type of things that I've played using that kind of mechanic. And it's not exactly the same, but there's a game called Climby where you can pull yourself around using the world and grab hold of things and pull yourself through. So I've only played the demo of that game, but a lot of people do say that that's a great game to try. So and the locomotion using that method works very, very well. So I think it'll work well in this game. And, you know, it's the same old story with these, when you've got these big developers like Ready at Dawn with the resources that they have for creating assets and the graphics that can really immerse you in this world. It's definitely, certainly one of my top 5 that I'm looking forward to.
So Steve, I noticed that Steve did not have this on his top 5 and didn't mention it on his honorable mentions. Is this a case of you not really knowing much about it, or did you see some video of it, Steve, and it just didn't tickle your fancy, basically?
No, I'm very interested. You know, we only had so many titles we were going to put down, so I chose not to list this one just because it didn't tickle my fancy as much as some of the others. You know, it looks really good, actually. You know, I should have put it. I really have no qualms about it. It looks good. The only thing I can say is Ready at Dawn, although they're a primetime AAA developer, their last title, at least that I'm aware of, was a PS4 game called The Order. Graphically beautiful game, like just graphically awesome, but it was kind of shallow in a lot of other ways. It was a shooter, but the shooting mechanics really wasn't anything to write home about. So I'm almost concerned that they maybe are too graphically oriented. And the little kind of one sort of teaser / announcement video that I did see of it, it kind of showed them outside of the spaceship or whatever, and they were kind of climbing along a rail or a pole or something. And I almost wonder if they're just going to have a few kind of gimmicky mechanics, and then that's the crux of the game wrapped in a pretty package. That said, I'll still get it and enjoy it because that type of stuff still hooks me. A good narrative or decent, any narrative, you know, it doesn't have to be good really in VR, just any narrative wrapped in a good, pretty package with some real, you know, space taking characters that you can kind of talk to face is going to certainly attract me to it. And so I'm sure it's a title I'm going to pick up. I just, you know, felt I wanted to list other things.
Okay. And one thing I'll mention briefly about Lone Echo is the guys that tested are absolutely in love with Lone Echo. They got a chance to play it hands-on, and I don't remember where it was at, where maybe it was like Oculus Connect 3 or something, where they all got to try it. And Will Smith, he got to try it. He was raving about it. And one thing they were raving about was multiplayer, that it actually has a multiplayer mode that is completely different than the normal single player adventure. And they were saying that the multiplayer was awesome. And they also talked about the locomotion, the fact that you grab onto things and you push off of things. And that something about that locomotion is it's not really a departure from, it just feels natural, I guess. It just feels like it feels totally natural. It feels totally normal. So you don't get any kind of a puke factor or any kind of nausea, because it just works. And they were just raving about it. I honestly don't know that I would be that hyped about Lone Echo if it wasn't for watching some of the tested videos with them raving about it, and then seeing the video of it being like, oh yeah. And Ready at Dawn, they did do the Order 1886, and most people kind of pan that game. It's well known to be visually incredibly impressive, but like incredibly shallow. But Ready at Dawn, I believe, weren't they like a PSP, like portable game studio for the longest time? And I think the Order was like their first real shot at making a big boy game, basically. And so this is their second chance. So maybe, hopefully they got the, they worked it out of the Order, and now they're a little bit better going forward. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Okay, number 4 is Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 got 5 points. Steve's #1 game. I had it as an honorable mention. I believe Gary had it as an honorable mention as well. This is a game that's coming out in like 10 days. So why don't we kick it over to Steve? Steve, you have it at #1. Go ahead and tell us what is it about RE7 that really just has you chomping at the bit to get at this game?
The beginning hour demo was really good, and to really put it into simple terms, it was a safe bet. We know what we're getting, and AAA is finally at VR. We're 10 days away. A AAA title is finally here after almost a year, since the Vive was released. And, it's coming from a well-known developer, Capcom. It's a well-known series, Resident Evil. They're rebooting it to kind of draw it back to its roots. This is a game that I would be excited about if VR was never made, and I'd be excited for it just to play it in flat. The fact that they have gone to lengths to make it fully playable in VR it just has me super excited. Like I can see myself, and I don't know if it's going to happen this way, but I can see myself kind of almost dropping everything else and just being like solely focused on this game and not playing much else. If the atmosphere is great, the narrative is probably going to be pretty solid. From what I've heard, and I'm trying to stay connected enough to the title, but also trying to not have anything spoiled. So I'm walking this kind of delicate line. And, there was a recent sort of media / press event, and people got to go play an extended session of the game. And then there was something in the last few days, I believe in Germany, another Resident Evil event. And the feedback coming out of here is that it's a true to Resident Evil game, which is something a lot of people were concerned about from the beginning hour demo. There were no herbs, there were no saving typewriters, none of the classic Resident Evil things. And that seems to be put to bed now. So we're getting a Resident Evil, and it's fully playable in VR. Unfortunately, it's kneecapped only on the PlayStation VR, and Vive owners and Oculus owners won't get it for a period of time. I think it's a 1-year exclusivity. So that's really the only bad thing I can say about it. I'm really, really looking forward to this title, and it's soon, 10 days.
Yeah, and Gary, you had it as an honorable mention. Any thoughts on RE7? Like, I know you're kind of watching PSVR from the sidelines. Is there any game on PSVR that's going to make you really, really move heaven and earth to try to get yourself a PSVR? Or, I mean, Resident Evil 7 does look like a good game, but it's probably not that game for you, maybe? I don't know.
No, there's not really any one game that is doing that for me at the moment. But I mean, Resident Evil 7 does look like a good game. As Steve said, in or out of VR, I think it looks like a good game. It's difficult for me to get too excited about it, just because you play it with the DualShock controller, and you go in playing in it's not room scale or anything like that. And it's difficult for me to say that, because when I first got VR, I never thought I'd say that. I always thought that playing with the gamepad would be perfectly fine. And, you know, I've played through The Vanishing of Ethan Carter and things like that, and I did enjoy it. It's just, it doesn't give you the same level of presence for me. And maybe I need to play Resident Evil 7 on the PlayStation VR to really get an idea of how good it can be with a gamepad. But just to quickly say as well, some of the other games on the PlayStation VR, like Gran Turismo Sports and also Ace Combat, some of these other cockpit-based games, ones that I can happily play with a gamepad, and they're also ones that I'd probably be looking forward to if I owned a PlayStation VR. Definitely, yeah. Those are both coming out at some point during this year, as far as I know, so they're two games as well that I'd be interested in.
You know, one quick thing I'll say about Resident Evil 7 is when that demo first came out, I played it quite a bit for like 4 or 5 days after it first hit. And I got the bad ending and never really, I didn't discover a lot of the stuff that was going on in the demo that you could discover at a certain point. And then Steve gave me that one tip about, you know, opening up the secret opening before you do anything. And recently, just a couple days ago, actually, I went back into Resident Evil 7 and I was doing a lot more of that. I finally got the handgun, and I got that valve thing that you tighten up in the bathroom to find the handgun. The only thing that kind of bothered me a little bit about it, though, is when you do get the handgun, I felt like the controls for controlling the handgun just seemed kind of awkward to me. Because you are using this controller, and when I'm in VR and I play Resident Evil standing up, Resident Evil 7, I play it standing up with my controller. And what I do, and I highly recommend this to anybody with Robinson the Journey, any of these PlayStation VR games like Batman, Arkham, if they put you in the world, stand up and play it. And if you want to go that way, then turn this way and then move forward. And so you turn your body. If you're turning your body, it puts you into the world more because you're physically turning your body and then you're just going forward. It also helps you with nausea, avoiding it, because it's the side to side movement that kind of screws you up and stuff. But I was really immersed in RE7 in the demo until I got the gun. And then when I got the gun, I was like, this is kind of awkward because it puts like a little cursor thing on and you're kind of holding the gun. And I don't know, Steve, I'm going to kick it over to you real quick because I know you did get the gun. What do you think about the gun part?
Yeah, it's less than ideal, I guess. You know, it didn't bother me too much, I think, because I played a lot of rigs, and you know that's a dual shock game. Now it's in a cockpit, so it has a little bit of what Gary was referring to as being acceptable. So yeah, it did feel a little off. From what I understand, combat really isn't the impetus of the game. You're really more about I don't want to say stealth avoidance, but conflict avoidance. You know, you have some defense, you have some weapons to defend yourself if need be, but it's not really, they don't want you going through like in Resident Evil 5 and 6, you know, with a rocket launcher over your shoulder, just blowing everything up. So I think they've kind of considered that in their design. You know, they have to, I guess, have a weapon of some sort, so they put it in there. But I think the design isn't going to be so combat focused that, you know, that really feels like a constraint.
You know, when I had the axe, the axe is kind of floating over here. When you hit the attack button, the axe swipes across. And when I got down into that dungeon where you do battle like a monster real quick, I actually just had the axe. I didn't have the gun, and I was just hacking away at this thing, and I actually killed it just with the axe. And I thought that worked out fine. It was just the gun just seemed. It's just when I got the gun, I was like, man, I wish this was a move controller where I just aim it, you know, normal style. But the thing about RE7, like you said, it's a known commodity. And this is not going to be a 2-hour experience or a 3-hour experience. It's going to be 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours or more, something in that range, I would have to imagine. And to be able to go through the full VR game with an entire story and everything, like Steve was saying, this is a real AAA game and it's coming out in 10 days. So there's definitely some serious excitement for that. Let's go to our next one. Let's see. We are at number 3. And number 3 is budget cuts. It got 6 points with our ranking. Gary had it ranked 3rd. Steve has it ranked 3rd. And then I had it on my honorable mention. So let's kick it over to Gary. Budget cuts. What's your thought? Because we haven't heard anything about this game for a long time. Where is budget cuts?
Yeah, it's. I think late last year they put something up to say it is going to be released at some point this year. We've still not really got any sort of definitive answers on that at the moment. But budget cuts for me, I don't think I enjoyed it when I first played it as much as a lot of people did. But I've played through it quite a few times now, and every time I enjoy it more. The demo for me felt like it had been made very early on in production. Like it was very tech demo-y. It felt as if they'd put this together just to as an experiment almost of what they could do in VR. But it was polished nevertheless, and a lot of people have said how great this game is and how much they enjoyed it. So, you know, I've given it a fair chance. And like I say, the more I play it, the more I get into this world and the level of immersion, and we use this word all the time, immersion, in this game, but there's certain games that really make it just stand out more than certain others. And for me, Vanishing Realms is definitely one of them. Vanishing Realms is right up there, probably the top of the list for me. But right underneath that, I'd say Budget Cuts. In terms of you just feeling like you are in this place, Budget Cuts does it in such a special way, really. And it's difficult for me to know what the difference is between what they've done and what some other similar developers have done to make me feel like that. But for some reason, this world really draws me in. So, yeah, Budget Cuts, when it does eventually come out as a full release, I'd be very interested to see what they've done with the game. Because, as I said before, I think the demo was very early on in production. So, just what they've achieved in that was impressive. So I'm really excited to see what they've achieved in a full game, and just see what other kinds of mechanics possibly they've come up with in the meantime, because this has been quite a while in development now as well. So I'm sure they've expanded just the standard mechanics they had in the demo. So yeah, for me, Budget Cuts is very deserving on this list.
Steve, let me kick it over to you and ask a question from the standpoint of No Man's Sky. We know all the hype about No Man's Sky and how we were waiting forever for No Man's Sky, and it finally came out, and it kind of was a disappointment because you're thinking it's going to be the most incredible thing ever, and you get your expectations so high, and then it finally comes out and it kind of disappoints. Is there any concern of that with Budget Cuts? Because Budget Cuts, the demo was there when the Vive first came out. That demo has been available forever. Why is this game taking so long to be made? And is it really going to be this epic thing that fulfills all our dreams?
Well, you know, I do have concerns with it. You know, I actually feel a little refreshing hearing Gary say what he had to say about it, because I played it, and presumably you as well. We played it very early on into our VR history, right? So what it did was groundbreaking, and I'm not sure, or I wasn't sure, that it would be so groundbreaking if we played that exact same experience today, having had all of our previous experiences already. So I've had concerns for a while that it just won't live up to the expectations based on that. Like it can only do so much. We've had so many great experiences since that. So hearing Gary say that he's gone back and played it and that it stands up and in fact is a better experience for him is refreshing, and it actually takes a little bit of that concern. And I say concern, I'm not like super concerned. Like I think it's going to be a good game. I think that it's on everyone's list, and it's been on everyone's list for many months now, that they may not be able to live up to the hype and the expectations. And I don't think it's so much the same as No Man's Sky, but rather because No Man's Sky was doing, you know, this really, task that they couldn't actually deliver on in the same way. I think Budget Cuts can deliver on their objective, but will that objective be as fully featured and as fully rich as we hope? You know, the whole teleport and portal type mechanic you know, after 6 hours, that may get a little tiring. You know, how are they able to leverage that and keep it fun and interesting throughout the whole duration of the game? You know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. So, you know, I think we should all look forward to it and have it high on our list. It's earned that from the incredible demo that it was, but understanding that it may not be the bee's knees, and just be the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I had it as one of my honorable mentions. I didn't put it in the top 5, but I didn't put it in the top 5 just because I think my top 5 is a powerful top 5. It's hard to get in there, and that says a lot about we do have some decent games that are coming. So it's nice that we're not grasping at straws with hardly anything. We do have some good games that are coming, so a few games are going to get left off that list. Budget cuts, when I think about it, when I was playing it, it was like it takes like 18 to 22 minutes or whatever to go through that whole little scenario that you go through. And that was an incredible 18 to 22-minute experience. My question is, are they going to be able to make like 9 of those? You know what I mean? Is the full game going to have like 9 of those segments that are similar? They last maybe 25 minutes. And also, how is the story going to work? Because the story in the demo is that you're trying to sneak into this facility so that you can get your job application, and instead of you know, get your job application approved and you sneak in there. Okay, so what's the story of the whole game if that's just like a 20-minute little segment of it? So I'm not really sure how they're going to put it all together. And then Steve, you were saying, is this something we're going to get tired of after a while? Is this something that you can repeat over and over again? So there are some concerns there. But the playability is great. I just hope they don't like price it too high, and I hope it does have some length. But I mean, everybody's looking forward to budget cuts, so we're definitely going to look forward to that. Okay, let's see here. We are now at number 2. And number 2 on our list, I thought this would actually be number 1, but we had a lone holdout. But number 2 on our list is Fallout 4 VR. And I want to kick it over to Steve real quick, because Steve did not have this on his top 5. He had it in his honorable mentions. And Steve, what's wrong with you, man? No.
Well, you know what? I think it's good for our listeners that I'm different from you guys. You know, you guys both had it at number 1, I believe, right? So yeah. It could have been my number 1 if I'd seen something of it. Have we seen a microsecond of this game in VR? Maybe I've missed it, but I don't think we have. Like, we know Bethesda's doing it. We know Fallout is a fantastic series. I personally have never been a fan of Skyrim and Fallout due to the whole sandbox open worldness element of it, but I think I'll love it in VR. And so I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. It's just I'm concerned it's going to be more like No Man's Sky than budget cuts, in that it's just kind of is this stagnant vaporware for 2 more years, you know, almost like a Final Fantasy or a Last Guardian or some of the titles that Sony had on the back burner for so long. It's been it's coming up on a year that it was announced, or well, no, I guess 6 months, 7 months, and it's just crickets. So they need to give me a morsel. They need to show me 10 seconds of gameplay. They need to show me that this is tangible and that it's going to work, and that it's coming reasonably soon. Like, I'm not even sure it's a 2017 title. And I know for now it's slated as that, but it would not surprise me in the next 3 weeks or something if we hear that it's, you know, coming summer 2018 or something like that. So that's my reason for not putting it number 1. It's just because there's so many unknowns. But its ceiling is very high, and it could be, you know, the best VR game to date when it does eventually come out.
Yeah, Gary, you had it number 1 on your list. Tell us, what is it about it that makes it that number 1 game for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, just to go back to Steve quickly, he's absolutely right. Really, he's being cautious about his optimism. I'm just letting my caution go away here for a second, because I'm just trying to be optimistic about this game. For me, Fallout 4 could almost set a precedent for other AAA games to come across. For me, I think if they get this right, if Bethesda have taken their time over making this game into the VR, and they've, as far as we know, well, they've had at least sort of 7 months production. I assume they were working on it before it was announced at E3. So maybe, say, a year. If they've been working on it for a year so far, they originally said, or that they've said since, that it will probably be coming out before June in 2017. But again, like Steve said, this hasn't been confirmed or anything like that. So if we can say that they've had 18 months of development, and all of that development has been purely converting this game, this full open world game, into virtual reality, then in my mind, that's enough to fill me with a little bit of confidence that they've gone about this in the right way. They're not cutting corners. They're trying to integrate VR into this in a good way and make it so that it's compelling for people to bring it across. And as I say, I think it could set a precedent for other AAA titles where developers who might be shying away, I'm talking about AAA developers here, who might be shying away a little bit from VR because it's unproven territory and nobody knows exactly how much money they're going to make at this stage. Some developers are dipping their toes in, but with Bethesda going all in and converting one of their biggest titles to VR, it could really attract people who are not necessarily into VR at the moment, but have heard of it and are just interested in what they've seen, but are not willing to pay the amount of money that is required at the moment. Fallout 4 could bring some of these people across. You know, Fallout 4 is such a huge title and it's got such a big fan base. I honestly believe that this could be one of the biggest titles to secure some kind of future for VR if it does come out and if it's integrated properly. If they've done as good a job as I'm hoping they have, then this could be one of the most important titles next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have Fallout 4 #1 on my list, and the reason why I have it #1 is it goes back to Fallout 3 for me. Fallout 3, like when I look back on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 era, Fallout 3 was my favorite game, period. I played a little bit of I played Oblivion a little bit, like maybe half of it. But it was Fallout that really got me because I just love this post-apocalyptic like thing, you know, just being in a post-apocalyptic world, having these robots, having these mutants, having zombies, vampires, all the little stories that you would go on. I've said it before that for me, video gaming, like my dream of video gaming is not really about video gaming. My dream is you see a really incredible movie. I remember being a kid and seeing Star Wars and then thinking, man, I want to be in that world. I want to be in that Star Wars world. And so for me, video gaming, really, what I really want is I want to be in a movie. I want to live inside a movie. I want to make decisions like the lead actor in a movie. And Fallout 3, when I played it, even though it's a flat game and the graphics weren't even that great for when it came out, it put me into that world. I was making decisions. I was meeting these vampires and trying to there was this one little storyline in Fallout 3, spoilers for a 2008 game, but there was this one little thing where you have to basically get into this vampire guild so that you can save this kid and get him out of there and get him back to his sister. And just little things like that, or you had to sneak into this slave trading place and try to free these slaves, or you didn't have to do that. You could kill everybody. You could be on the side of the slave traders. It just puts you in that world. And then even more so than that, one of my best memories of Fallout 3 is just the subtle music that was playing in the background and just walking through the wasteland and seeing these buildings that are just destroyed. And you would go up to the different doors and stuff, and 90% of the doors, you couldn't open them, you couldn't do anything. But every once in a while, there was a door you could open up and you could go inside and you see like a couch and you see a kitchen table and you see some cans of food, but it's a destroyed wasteland. And the idea, well, when Fallout 4 came out, I was incredibly hyped for Fallout 4 because I wasn't into VR yet. And I got Fallout 4 right away and I played it for a while, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't hit me quite like Fallout 3. I didn't play that long into it. But the idea of playing it in VR and actually really being inside that world and being able to go into these destroyed buildings and like look up at the ceiling and look down and being a life-size character that's in that Fallout world, I can't imagine anything better, really. Skyrim, I like Fallout more than Skyrim, but Skyrim might actually work slightly better for VR because of the sword and the shield angle of it. But one thing I'm hopeful for is that if Bethesda can solve this Fallout 4 VR thing, then I don't think it would be that hard for them to rework Skyrim and have a VR version of Skyrim maybe a handful of months later. If they can dial it in, anything that's running on that game engine, they might be able to modify it and bring that out as well. And then future games, I'm sure they're working on another Elder Scrolls, and I'm hoping that in parallel, they're like, let's build this for VR right along. You know, they might have a small little team of people that are building the next Elder Scrolls to be in VR and flat simultaneously. And Gary said it. This is the game that could almost save VR single-handedly, if VR even needs to be saved. I don't think it really does. But I think the one worry we have about VR is like, is VR going to be this slow burn that takes years and years and years? Or are we going to get an explosion where it kind of speeds things up? And if Fallout 4 VR is truly incredible, it could be that type of thing that kind of speeds things along. 100-hour game. What's the longest anybody has ever spent in VR? For me, the longest I've ever been in VR in one play session is probably like an hour and 20 minutes. But with Fallout 4, I might be in there for 3 hours. You know, I might come out, my eyes might be totally bloodshot and dry, and I might have a headache like you wouldn't believe. But this could be the first game where I actually spend like 3 hours in it. So I'm absolutely, I couldn't be more hyped for Fallout 4. Okay, but that is not our number one game. Surprisingly enough, that is not number one. Our number one game is, actually, let me go back and double check the name. Our number one game is Arctica 1, Arctica.1, and it's by a company called 4A Games. And 4A Games is not a new company. The name is new, but they're not new. They made like the Stalker series, I believe, and stuff like that. They're like some of the developers from that. And this is their VR game. They've been given a good chunk of money by Oculus, I would have to imagine. This is exclusive to the Oculus Rift. And if you watch a little video of Arctica 1, there's nothing about it that is like going to blow anybody out of the water. It's not doing anything super incredible in any one area, but it just looks so fine-tuned. You know what I mean? It just looks like it's really dialed in, and that's why I'm super hyped about Arctica 1. But let's kick it over to, let's see, did Steve have it number one? Who had, oh no, Steve had Resident Evil 7 number one. You had Arctica number 2. Okay, I guess all three of us had it number 2 on our list. But I'll go ahead and kick it over to Steve. Steve, what is your take on Arctica 1?
You know, I don't know too much about the game, you know, but unlike Fallout, we've actually seen footage of it. So, you know, I am trying to, you know, I'm not trying to be too cautious or anything. I'm just trying to, you know, as my good friend Dave Chappelle would say, I'm just trying to keep it real, you know, and right now Fallout 4 isn't entirely real. So, this game, like you said, it is nothing mind-blowing about it, but it just looks like it's executed really, really well. It reminds me, so you're on this, what looks like some sort of spaceship or something, but it reminds me of sort of a hybrid between Resistance, Fall of Man, and Dead Space. You know, if you kind of take more of the little bit gloomier atmosphere of Dead Space and combine some of the more weapons and a little bit of a brighter aesthetic in some key ways of Resistance. That was my initial you know, impression with the game. And the trailer that I saw kind of ends with a large enemy approaching, which is kind of one of my sticking points in VR, that that I really appreciate is when something of scale approaches you. You know, you look up at something, or something just takes up a lot of physical space, and you have to figure out how to take it down. You know, to me, that's fun, and it gives it an edge of realism. You know, like when you're watching a sci-fi or a fantasy movie, you know, how many times does an elf or something have to figure out how to take out a giant troll? You know, we had that in Lord of Rings and stuff like that. So, you know, it's kind of like VR can leverage that same sense of scale. And you know, this game, I didn't see anything quite that big, but some of the larger size things that we saw looks like it could lend itself that way. And you know, it just, you know, I don't know squat about the story. I don't know really too much other than the actual gameplay that they showed, and that looked really good. Now, one caveat to it, you know, again, because I'm so cautiously optimistic, is it's being an Oculus-centric title, and I don't know if the developers just kind of hamstrung it, but I was reading an article on it, and I forgot who wrote it, but they got to try the game, presumably at Oculus 3, and they said that locomotion was disabled, so that it had a small touch of almost a wave shooter. And if that's the case, that'll knock it several pegs down in my book. Even as good as it is, I'll still pick it up and play it. But I'm really hoping that it has locomotion of some way, and then it's not sort of 180 wave shooter centric. So that's my take on it. Gary?
Yeah, to be honest, I think you've said it all, Steve, for this one, because I don't know a great deal about this game either, but I've seen the trailer, and there's just certain things in the trailer that stood out to me. It does, again, I'll go back to the theme of my list, really. It's the fact that it hints at sort of narrative within this game as well that can sort of drag you through the story and keep you interested. It's not just, it doesn't seem to be just like a wave shooter, and I hope that's not the case. So yeah, and we don't really need to mention it, but the graphics look absolutely outstanding on this game. They're probably one of the biggest standout parts from the trailer, and just everything about it. There's just a few interesting things in the trailer that made me have to put it on my list. But yeah, I've not really got a great deal to add more than what you said.
I have a quick correction to make. So the company behind this game, 4A Studios, I guess it is, they were the Metro 2033 guys. And were those the guys that made Stalker, like way back a little? For some reason, I don't know, maybe Stalker, I'm on a completely other tangent. But there was like the Stalker series that was on PC. It was like kind of like you're going through like a nuclear wasteland in Russia and stuff. And then I thought that they went to make Metro 2030, or the first Metro, and that was like their big attempt at doing like a real legit AAA game. And then they did like Metro Last Light and all that stuff. So I might have had that mistaken as far as the Stalker series is concerned. But this is a primetime company. I mean, what Oculus did was they said, let's get somebody that can make something incredibly impressive graphically. Let's show somebody what a AAA game looks like with a great developer that you throw a lot of money at, and you give them the time to make something truly impressive. When you see the trailer for Arctica 1 and you see the guy's hands and you see this table here and he's like picking up a gun and putting different pieces onto the gun, and it just looks so clean and crisp, and everything is just so highly detailed. It's not a go anywhere kind of world like Fallout 4 where you could just go anywhere. It's probably more of like tunneling you through certain areas and stuff. But graphically, if you want to know, like when I imagined what a true AAA game in VR would look like, in my head is kind of Arctica 1. That's kind of like, I'm talking like a year ago, you know, when I was thinking about VR like a year ago, and I didn't know anything about VR, but I was just imagining what a VR game could look like with true AAA development. And then I see the Arctica 1 trailer. That's kind of what I got. And so I'm definitely hyped on this one, but I know it doesn't have that go anywhere kind of world that Fallout 4 does, but it still looks really good. All right, so that's the 10 games that we are most hyped for. I'll run back the list real quick. Hold on one sec here, if I can get back to where our list was. Oh, never mind. Forget it. I can't find it. Oh, wait, here we go.
I got it. I got you.
Okay.
It was actually top 9. I don't know why we ended up with 10, but number 9, it was Knockout League, and then a 7 tie with Farpoint and the Gallery. Number 6 was Robo Recall. Number 5 was Lone Echo. Number 4 was Resident Evil 7. Number 3, Budget Cuts. Number 2, Fallout 4 VR. And number 1, Artica.1, Artica.1. Hopefully they explain what that name means.
Yeah, and then we also had, of course, we had our honorable mentions as well. So, I mean, we got a nice little handful of games that we're looking forward to in 2017. It's a nice little list, and I'm sure we're going to find out more stuff at GDC, and then we'll probably find out more stuff at E3, and then if Oculus does another Oculus Connect, or if HTC has some special little things. So we got some good stuff coming this year. So, I mean, there is definitely some good stuff to look forward to. Gary, I know you had a few other topics that you might have wanted to get into about like what we're looking forward to in VR. What did you want to go to next?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I was just having to think about this before the show, and I've got a list of sort of 5 things that we can just quickly go through. I've not sort of spent a lot of time on this, but this is just a list of things that I hope to happen in the next 12 months of VR, and just things that generally I'm looking forward to other than games in the world of VR. So I'll just quickly go through this list. We'll go through them one by one, and we can just, if anybody wants to comment on them, then we can do that. But yeah, the first one that came to mind was that we'll get some kind of a definitive, and we've mentioned this again and again, but we'll get some kind of a definitive answer on the wireless solutions for VR. There are, especially with CES just happened, there are so many different wireless solutions floating around at the moment, and we don't know really too many details on many of them. I would say that the TPcast solution is the one that we're all most familiar with, but even that, there hasn't been any sort of real hands-on time other than sort of very briefly where they've tried out prototypes in the presence of the developers of this unit. So yeah, the first thing on the list is basically for 2017, I'm hoping that we get some kind of concrete evidence and concrete reviews almost of these wireless solutions, which I'm sure we'll get because they're being released soon. And just to give us some idea of what kind of performance we can get from these things, just so as buyers and as consumers in VR, we know what we're getting really, and the options out there other than this TPcast, although that's a viable one as well. I don't know, Steve, do you have any thoughts on these wireless solutions? Or
no, I think it's inevitable, and I think 2017 will get us closer. I mean, should maybe even get us all the way there, because the TPcast is slated to release, and maybe Intel's product may materialize by the end of the calendar year, maybe not, but we're going to have wireless. What is still needs to be fleshed out is how well integrated is it going to be? Is it going to be, are we going to clip it to the head strap and it just works flawlessly from then on out? Or is it this type of thing where we're managing drivers and we turn it on and half the time it doesn't work and we got to reboot the receiver and transmitter, and it just becomes this clunky thing. That's still yet to be seen, and really that's the only thing that I think we have to worry about at this point. I think it's going to work. We've seen enough to indicate that when it works, and that tested video, he did a pretty good job of occluding it, and it worked. We shouldn't be occluding it to that degree, especially if we install it up high by a base station. So I think 2017 will check the box for successful wireless. How well is to be determined.
Yeah, Anthony, how about you? Have you got any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, for me, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait till everybody gets this thing, and then, because when something hits the wild, when the actual consumers get their hand on something, and then you give it maybe 60 days for all these consumers to get their hands on it, at that point, you find out everything about something. You find out about all the good and all the bad. And so for me, my strategy is to wait for all the Redditors to get their hands on this, and then I'll know what the real deal is like 60 days later. And then if everything seems to check out, I will probably buy one, because having a large enough play area, I could take huge, I mean, playing Vanishing Realms in it would be pretty awesome. So that's kind of my thought.
Yeah. Okay, the next one on the list is, I'm looking forward to, this is just something I'm looking forward to, because this is certainly going to happen within the next 12 months, but it's better implementation of the graphics card technology that we've got at the moment. You know, NVIDIA, they have this single pass stereo specifically for VR, and AMD have this technology called Liquid VR, which is supposed to help with, from the videos that I've seen of this, it seems to be helping with latency. They call it presence. They say they want to keep the presence high. So we've had a few titles that have implemented some of this sort of single pass stereo, and I think it's available in the engines, the game engines now, Unreal and Unity. So I'm hoping to see sort of more integration of these technologies, and also further development from the graphics card companies for specialized VR technology as well. There's not a great deal to say, but Anthony, what are your thoughts on these technologies on the graphics cards?
Well, I can tell you that I'm rocking an old 970, so I'm at the bare minimum, and I knew all along that I am going to have to upgrade. There's no question about it. But I was thinking, you know, if I can survive on this bare minimum as long as I can, let me try to, you know, squeeze this thing out for as long as I can. And actually, you know, one of the things I was thinking about was Fallout 4. Like, the day Fallout 4 VR is available is probably the day I need a new graphics card, you know, to bump my situation up. But yeah, I've been wondering, we heard about all this graphics card stuff about how these new cards are going to have this ability where, instead of having to completely brute force render two different views, it kind of does some type of algorithm thing or whatever to basically take a lot of that heavy lifting off of there. And the idea with that is that our games should be running way better. You know, I mean, if games are really programmed to use that, they should be running way better frame rates. We haven't seen any of this yet, really. I mean, there's people out there that have 1080s and 1070s. And at some point, I mean, if you look at all the marketing speak when they bought those cards, the thought was they're going to be at a whole new level on certain games that actually utilize that. Maybe 2017 will be the year that we actually see games that truly give us the benefit of this. For me personally, I'm actually kind of waiting for the 1080 Ti. I was hoping that that would get announced at CES, and that might be the card that I jump in. But you know, that's really all the thoughts I have on that.
How about you, Steve? What do you think about these graphics cards?
I don't think I have too much to add, other than, yeah, I mean, you know, NVIDIA and AMD are putting work into this stuff, and it needs to be leveraged, and I'm sure it will be. There's so much that has to get sorted out, that I understand why these engines are lagging behind the tech a bit, especially since the cards didn't come out until, you know, 6-7 months ago. You know, it makes sense, but now's the kind of, in my opinion, the time for excuses, I guess, is almost up, and it should be leveraged. And, you know, on a similar note, a 3D Blu-ray, it has because it has kind of both the left eye, right eye equivalent, the stereoscopic element. It renders one eye or one side of the 3D image, and then the other track, for lack of a better phrase, it only shows what's different from the perspective. It doesn't house the full other scene. And I think, and this may be what some of the graphics card tech is doing, I think that maybe in a way it's almost like compression, that if an object is the exact same perspective in both the left and right eye, why are we rendering it twice? And I think right now we probably are. So hopefully that is some of the technology, or at least some of the rational logic that's being worked through, and algorithms being developed to really, you know, improve that. Because looking at some of these games that we had on our list, some of them look very graphically demanding, and, you know, the ability to run them is going to be important.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, next on the list. So this is more just, I think everybody's wanting this one. This is more of something I was thinking about, where we can get some kind of a better progression towards standardizing VR tech between companies. We don't want all these separate ecosystems going on. And there have been steps towards this in just the last few months. We've got this Kronos API, and also the organization has been established, the Global Virtual Reality Association, which has had all of the major players really sign up to. It's just to create some kind of standardization among VR, so that people really know what they're getting into, and you're not going to be left out in the cold if you're not part of a certain ecosystem or something like that. So that was just, again, there's not too much to say on this, but it's just something that I'm hoping we'll hear more about during 2017, and hopefully more people will sign up, and we'll get to hear more about the real ins and outs and of what this means for us as consumers by having all these standardizations for VR as well. So let's go back to Steve quickly. I don't know if you've got anything to mention really on this one.
No, I'm a fan of standards. Let's start making this stuff efficient. It's here. It takes a lot of power. Let's get it efficient.
Yeah. Okay. And Anthony, anything to add to that one?
I don't really have anything to say. I just, if it's about exclusivity, that's not going to happen. PlayStation is going to have their exclusivity. That's what they have to have, a reason for you to buy a PlayStation 4 and for you to buy their headset. The Oculus exclusivity is a little bit different, because I mean, a headset, they're not making money off the headset, so why do they really want to, but I don't know. I mean, it's good. Hopefully, the theory is that, look, VR is a baby. It's a little infant. Let's try to take care of it. Why are we going to let all this stuff cause us problems when we're trying to sell this to the masses? We have enough problems just selling this thing to the masses. And then if we're going to have all this infighting as well, it's going to screw everything up even more. So let's come together. But at the same time, the business, just the raw business strategy of it, you have to have exclusives to bring people to your platform. The Oculus exclusives aren't really about the headset, it's about the store. They want to get you buying games in their store, so they have their subliminal hooks in you. So that's what I have to say about that. But you know what, I do want to bring up one topic, going on another tangent here, but I did want to cover one thing before we get out of here. Is like, what is one thing that you would love to see in the year 2017 for VR? And I'll give you mine first as kind of an example. The one thing that I would love to see in VR more than anything else, and this is not like a game like Fallout 4 or anything like that. What I want to see in VR is, I want to see my chest. I want to see my legs. I want to see my arms. Everybody wants like super high resolution. They want 4K per eye. They want a bigger field of view. They want no screen door. They want foveated rendering, blah, 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 on and on and on. My feeling is this: if our resolution was even lower, like if we had crappy resolution, 70-degree field of view, even worse field of view, but if we could put our physical bodies into VR, it would change the game. I'm telling you, immersion would multiply by unknown amounts. If I could just look down, like when I'm in VR, if I could look down and see my chest, if I could look down and see my shoulder, if I could look down and see my legs, the kind of immersion that would introduce would be off the charts. Every little experience that you would have, no matter how juvenile the graphics are, no matter how cartoony everything is, if you can put your physical body into VR, how incredible would that be? And I asked this question to some developers, and apparently the answer to this is way harder than you would ever imagine. It is not simply like what I thought was, all the Steam the Steam thing where they had the 300 companies come in and they could use the sensors and all that. I thought, okay, this is what's going to happen. One of these companies is going to go to this Valve thing, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to have a long sleeve shirt. It's going to have a sensor on your wrist, on your elbow, on your shoulder, you know, sensor over here. And then you're going to have long, like pajama pants. It'll have a sensor at your kneecap. I thought this is going to be a problem that will be solved no problem. But what I found out was it's way more complicated than that. And it really is a real problem. One suggestion that I had to these developers, and I'm totally, like, I don't know anything about anything. I've never developed anything. I don't know anything about code or anything. But what I thought is that if there was some way that we could model your human body, right? And if we could have a 3D model of yourself that was flawlessly generated somehow, like maybe you have to go somewhere and you have to get scanned to have this done or whatever. But if you had a 3D model of yourself, and then you could take a 3D model of your Vive headset and your controllers, and if you could combine the 3 points of tracking that has, and it's attached to your real physical 3D model, then can't they like figure the rest of it out? But the developers that I talked to in this little Reddit thread that I was on were like, no, that's not going to work. You need like 28 points of tracking for that to work. So anyway, my dream is I want my physical body in VR. I think it'll make it incredible. I'm going to send it over to Gary. What do you think about, is this something you think about? I mean, I'm sure everybody thinks about this.
Yeah, it'd be great to have something like that. Was there something that I saw a few months ago where somebody had made some kind of suit that you could wear within VR? I don't know if this was purely just for sort of haptics, or if it was actually made some kind of representation within VR of you. It might have just been some kind of haptic suit. I'm not 100% sure on this. Do you know what I'm talking about? Or
I don't think I don't know, not specifically.
No, but yeah, I mean, like you say, it's something we all think about with this. To get a better representation of ourselves within virtual reality is part of the dream of virtual reality, I suppose. So yeah, it'd be a cool thing. I don't know how complicated. Well, obviously the people that you've spoken to would say that it's not viable at this stage, but it does seem like it could possibly be something within the next couple of years we could see.
Oh, you know what some of the developers actually did tell me in that little thread is they were saying that if you had Kinects, like, you know, the Microsoft Kinect, like if you had 2 Microsoft Kinects, you could somehow, like, they already have something right now that can put your body kind of into the game. And they had some little demos that showed the guy like with his body and stuff, but you have to have like extra Microsoft Kinects to do it.
There was one thing as well that I was going to mention about this. Sorry, Steve, it's only a quick tangent, this one is, but with regards to getting your body within VR, Intel's Project Alloy had this little demo as well, which I hadn't seen before. It was just in an article that I read yesterday, I believe, but where it had sensors and cameras on the front where it would scan your hands in front of you, and they would then be represented more or less as they are in real life within virtual reality, and you could use them to pick up things. So that's sort of, I guess, the first step, and it's more using this inside out technology to scan your hands, and the Kinect's route would probably be outside in to scan your body, your whole body, I guess.
Yeah, you know, the one thing about that's cool is, did you see that guy's hands? It was like his arms had like hair on his arm. Like basically it takes a picture of your real hand, you know, your real arm. Like if you have a scar here, it's going to have a scar there. If you have a tattoo here, it's going to have a tattoo there. And that does add that extra immersion. Let's kick it over to Steve. Now, Steve, we're talking about putting our bodies into VR. You can talk about this. Or is there some other major thing that you just really wish could happen this year?
Putting our bodies in VR, I don't think I have thought about it as much as you know, in trying to think about it on the fly here. You know, it is something that I think would be really cool, especially if you have a standout. You know, there are times I play a game like a chair in the room, and, you know, I'll find myself kind of doing this number and looking at my hands. And, you know, the hand is maybe a little smaller or a little bigger, or it has a tattoo that I don't have. And it is a little immersion breaking. So, you know, them being able to do that, I think does have value and would help. But as you discovered, to pull that off, it would be very hard to have natural movement, because each tracking point kind of gives you like the limbs of a robot. You know, if you have one on your elbow and one on your hand, you know, you can kind of do that, but you can't have fluid arm movement. And, you know, that would require, you know, I like the idea of having the two Microsoft Kinects, right? Because the two gives it a little bit of stereoscopic 3D scanning capability, which can map in some of that fluidness. So yeah, maybe we'll get it one day. I don't think it's going to happen in 2017. But you know, changing gears a little bit, I read earlier this week on Road to VR, this tech from a company that I just, for whatever reasons, I wasn't aware of, but the company's called Hype VR, and they do a volumetric video capture. You know, we talk a lot about video, and video is an important thing to VR, I think. But right now, all the good quote unquote video, passive video experiences are all rendered. You know, you have Alumet, Henry, Lost, Invasion, all those are rendered because that's how they get that 3D depth. Actual live video doesn't have any depth to it. It's flat. And projecting it into a dome in VR doesn't really help that. So this company, Hype VR, they actually have this camera rig, and it has all sorts of LiDAR, which is, I guess it's a laser-based depth sensing technology, and a multiple camera array. And they're able to shoot full motion video, actual physical video, but map it in 3D space in such a way that, you know, if you're standing by an object and you crouch down, the perspective of the video changes as if it was this rendered game engine or environment. And I thought that was really impressive. There's, again, I saw it on Road to VR, but I'm sure you can Google it and you can kind of see the effect there. I think that may get more featured in 2017, and I think it's a big deal. You know, IMAX trying to get involved in VR, and you know, being able to do this will kind of be in a lot of ways that Fallout 4 gateway. I think having fully featured quality movies that people can watch in VR that has depth to them can also be that gateway that pull a lot of people in.
Yeah, I did hear about this. I think they're working with Intel, if I'm not mistaken on it. Like Intel showed the demo of this, but they're working with this other company on it. One of the downsides of it, and I might have that completely wrong, but one of the downsides of it though is they talked about how much data it's actually using, and like every second is using, or like every frame is using like terabits of data, just crazy amounts of data. So it's like, how is that actually going to get to our headset? They had some kind of demo where they were able to do it there, but how it's actually going to get to us is a good question.
I just pulled the article up. So initially, when they first kind of got this rolling out, 30 seconds of capture clocked in at 5.4 terabytes. They have it now to about 2 gigs per 30 seconds of capture, which is a huge improvement. You know, it's still kind of high because, you know, the average movie, you know, being, let's say 2 hours, you know, it's 240 minutes. That's 480 gigs. That's like half a terabyte, which is far more palatable than 5 terabytes. So they've done a 30, 40 fold improvement. You know, just kind of doing some quick math in my head. So I think they'll get there. I think the data won't need to be that voluminous, you know, after they put it in the appropriate compression containers and blah, 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 blah. You know, I think it's something to keep an eye on. And as far as I know, they're the only ones that even have a working solution like this. So, you know, it really stuck out to me because I didn't think it was possible. I mean, I knew eventually one day, you know, it was kind of like way, way, way down the road. And after seeing this, it's now something palatable and possible in the next few years that we could watch, you know, a Bond movie or something in VR and it actually have depth and something we want to watch as opposed to the crappy video that you can watch now. And then of course the porn industry, oh hell, they'll eat this up. So
yeah. One little thing I wanted to touch on real quick, if we got a minute here, is just, I know we talked briefly about the Intel Project Alloy, And Intel did announce at CES that there was going to be a partner, a third-party partner, that is going to bring out a Project Alloy headset in the fourth quarter of 2017. And speaking of maybe headsets, like, is there a product coming out in 2017 that might be something you jump on? You know, is there something out there? Project Alloy is really interesting to me because they showed off this one demo where Intel talks about merged reality. We know about augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and now Intel is talking about merged reality. And this is just another marketing term, but their idea on merged reality is really interesting to me because what it is imagine yourself in your living room and you have your sofa and you have your rocking chair and you have your coffee table, for example, right? And so then you put on your Project Alloy headset and you might have to like look around the room for a couple of seconds or whatever, unless it's already scanned the room. But what it does is it scans the room and it knows your sofa and your coffee table and it knows that you have a lamp right there. And then what it does is it puts you into a game where your sofa is there. Your coffee table is there, but maybe your coffee table is not a coffee table. Maybe it's some type of space table with like battle maps on it or something, but your sofa is there. And like they showed a demo where like these guys were like jumping on the sofa, but there was like things going on all around them. And some people were saying, that sucks. I don't want to see my sofa. That's going to take me out of the experience. But I was thinking, well, wait a minute. When your physical body, when you see a sofa in VR and you can climb on it and flop all over it while you're shooting aliens or something, I think it actually adds more immersion because here's a physical thing that you see in VR and your brain is like, wait a minute, this thing is perfectly mapped. I'm feeling it now with my physical senses of touch and it's here and I'm physically here. This is grounding me in this space. I actually think it might ground you more. I know in one way it does subtract a little bit of the immersion because you want to be in a completely different world and you see your sofa there. You're not in a completely different world, but at the same time, it physically grounds you in that space, coffee tables and all that, being able to walk around your house. It's almost like HoloLens or Magic Leap because they have those two little cameras on there. And so they're doing this like mixed reality type stuff. Did either of you guys, I'll kick it over to Gary. Gary, did you see any of this demo? What do you think about this Project Alloy? Do you think it's a non-starter or is this something to be interested in?
I think it's definitely something to be interested in. Everything I've seen about it does seem, well, very interesting. It's difficult really to get an idea on, because if they're saying that a third party is going to manufacture this headset from the technology that they're developing and it's going to be released later on this year, I would think I would think the cost of that would be quite high to get something like this out this year. But having said that, the demos that they're doing are very, very impressive. This was just one part of the demos that they were showing off with Project Alloy. And to my mind, it was probably the most impressive out of all the ones that I saw. It's something where you could map a larger area because Project Alloy has inside-out tracking. So you can map large areas. You can take it. It's more portable. You can take it to various places, map different areas, and then have an experience in the same game, but in a completely different area, different surroundings, then that will make the game different as well. So it's got a lot of potential, this kind of thing. And this is just one of a number of headsets that is being talked about where they're having inside out tracking. You know, you've got the Oculus Santa Cruz demo. We know almost nothing about this except it's a standalone inside out tracking headset. And you've also got this thing, which I read about today, actually called Eonite, which is, it's not a headset. It's based on software, which again, works with existing headsets with the addition of a sensor where you can do sort of inside out tracking as well. So these are all things that are very interesting. Anything we can get where these headsets are more portable and have these extra features that I didn't even consider. I didn't even consider some of the things that Project Alloy is capable of. So it's just a really exciting time.
Yeah, Steve, what do you think about this? Because Intel as a company Intel is kind of at a crossroads as a company. We're moving to mobile processors more and more, and then when it comes to artificial intelligence, actually the GPU manufacturers like Nvidia and AMD, if you look at their stock is like, I mean, it's just going straight up, because what they found out is that running like 1 million parallel processes is better than having like a main processor. And so Intel, they find themselves between a rock and a hard place. And one of the reasons I think this Project Alloy thing is so interesting is because Intel really has to do something, or they could be on the outside looking in. And so I think Intel's kind of looking at this VR thing, like if we can get in here on this VR with our RealSense technology and all of that, and it's all in one, like the computing power is in there. Intel is able to do, they can put the graphics processing right there with the regular processing in an integrated chip and get it relatively small. We just don't know if it's going to have that kind of power. But let me send it over to Steve. Steve, what do you think about this? Is this going to be Intel's strategy to maybe create a new market for themselves?
Perhaps, I really hadn't considered what you just said, about Intel's path long term. There's probably some truth to that. I think we're always going to need processors, and so long as they can do good there, they're probably safe. But yeah, I think there's no question that they wanted to expand their portfolio a bit, right? So the Project Alloy, from what I've seen of it, it is very interesting, and it's very creative tech, and I certainly hope to be able to try it someday. The idea though of mapping in, say, your furniture, and if you're playing a war game, your sofa becomes a pile of sandbags or something that you shoot over and hide behind. That's cool. But I think it may, if you play in one room, that runs into the problem of always having an object there, unless you have a wife like mine that likes to rearrange the furniture every 3 months. You're gonna run into the same object. So I think there's some immediate downsides, but being able to try new places though, so that's an upside. So there's pros and cons. I think it's technology that needs to be fleshed out a little more. But it's exciting, and they're doing things that are new and creative, and that's only going to help further the industry. There's all sorts of ways to solve the problems that we have of putting our face in a mask and then being in our room or multiple rooms in our houses, right? Like that's a problem, and anything they can do to creatively leverage that can possibly go a long way.
Alrighty, well, we've been running for quite a while here. Before we sign off, did anybody have any last things that they wanted to mention, or?
Yeah, a couple things. A few days ago or so, it was announced that Dirt Rally is coming to PSVR. So that's kind of an unexpected, some good news. And so assuming some of our listeners don't frequent Reddit 37 times an hour like we do, they may not know about that. And then also in PSVR news, Gorilla Cambridge has closed its doors. The developer's been shut down, and sadly they are the developer of one of my favorite VR games, Rigs. And there's a lot of concern that support for the game is going to go the way of the dodo bird. I don't know what's going to happen. There was some Rigs DLC that free DLC that was supposed to be dropping every week or so. We don't know if that's going to continue or not, but just kind of wanted to say that if you're a fan of the game, that maybe not walk up to the cliff just yet and sell your copy of Rigs or whatever. Like, the developer may be gone, but Sony can still support this. there's no reason to believe they're going to shut the servers down or really shut down the connectivity to the peer-to-peer. There's no reason to believe that the future DLC rigs aren't already done and that Sony's just going to release them. So, you know, if you're one of the few people like I saw on Reddit that, you know, as soon as they heard their news, they were trying to list their copy of rigs and was walking away, you know, maybe that's too much of a brash reaction, you know, just, you know, it sucks. It's bad news. But, you know, the game still works, and I think it's going to work for quite a while.
Gary, do you have any last minute stuff?
No, that's really everything I had to mention this week. So, yeah, we can call that episode 18.
Okay, and I forgot to remind everybody at the beginning of this episode, but just a reminder again, if you do go to our YouTube channel, the Reckoner VR channel, we are transitioning, well, we have transitioned everything over to VR Roundtable. That is our new home, and I'm pretty sure, I think this is actually going to be the last episode that we post on Reckoner VR for the last few stragglers. But starting with next episode, episode 19, everything is going to be over at VR Roundtable. And we're doing some Let's Plays and stuff. You can go check it out. We have a couple new Let's Plays up there. Gary did a super hot one. I have an Island 359 one. Steve did A10 VR. And we're going to try to be adding some more of those as we go along. And as far as the podcast feed goes, nothing's changed there. Let's see, what else is there? If you need to send us an email, any questions, concerns, comments, or whatever, you can email us at vrroundtable@gmail.com. And if you could leave a comment maybe on our YouTube page, or like the videos, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And on the podcasting, whatever podcast service that you use, if you maybe could leave a review for VR Roundtable, we definitely appreciate that as well. And that's going to do it for episode 18 of VR Roundtable. We'll see you guys next time.
Cheers. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye.